Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's been speaking to industry bosses. He's also planning more changes to JobKeeper. I spoke to him a short time ago. Treasurer, thank you for your time. I want to talk to you about business and industry concerns that I know you're across because they raised it with you the other day. But first, today's economic and unemployment figures are terrible, but were they a surprise to you?
Well, this is devastating economic news in light of the stage 4 restrictions in Victoria. Nobody wanted to get to this point, Tracy, but it's a harsh reality that we now live in here in Victoria with curfews, with business closures, with school closures. It's really a difficult time for families right across the state. Now, the economic update from Treasury is now of the view that between $10 to $12 billion will be taken from the Australian economy as a result of what is going on in Victoria with stage 4 restrictions.
Victoria is recording between 400 and 700 cases roughly per day, about a quarter of them still of unknown origin. Have you done modelling, or do you know modelling that predicts where those figures will be at the end, the projected end of this 6-week lockdown in the middle of September?
No, again, they are matters for the medical experts in Victoria based on the restrictions that they've put. But what we do know is that if people follow the rules, we will be able to stem the tide of new cases. And as you say, 471 new cases just today. That's 97% of Australia's new cases coming from one state, namely Victoria. So we're really a country at two different stages of dealing with the coronavirus. There's Victoria and then there's the rest. And it's really important to the national economic recovery, not just to the Victorian economy, but to the national economy, that we get it under control.
I guess, you know, in any scenario, you have to hope for the best and plan for the worst. What if stage 4 doesn't work? What if in 6 weeks we're still at an unacceptably high number of cases? Are you doing contingency planning for the continuation of JobKeeper and JobSeeker at the current level in that event?
Well, the reality is we have to make it work. Everyone needs to follow the rules, and in doing so we can help stem the tide of new cases and then over time see a reduction in the restrictions. When it comes to JobKeeper, it's already the largest single economic measure that any Australian government has ever undertaken. And of course, we're continuing to look at its eligibility requirements to ensure that as many businesses are able to access that program that need to. It's a national program, it's a temporary program, but it's been an economic lifeline right now for 3.5 million Australian workers and nearly 1 million Australian businesses. So it's playing a critical role in our economy, and obviously in Victoria it's going to be really heavily relied on, not just today, but over the months ahead as those businesses continue to do it tough.
But realistically, might it need to continue at the current level beyond the supposed end date of the end of September?
Well, the first thing to say is that we have announced that it will go for an additional 6 months, so to the end of March. Right now, to the end of September, it will be at a $1,500 flat payment. Then it steps down gradually to $1,200 for the following 3 months, and then to $1,000 for the 3 months after that. That's already and continues to be a very significant financial contribution to the federal government. Now, state governments can take their own steps as well to complement what we do, but the JobKeeper program, together with the cash flow boost, which provides up to $100,000 to businesses based on the size of their payroll, the $750 payments we've provided to millions of Australian pensioners, obviously the JobSeeker payment. There's a lot of things, Tracy, that we're doing that are helping to keep people in work and helping to cushion the blow for what are really difficult times.
Sure, but there are 400,000 people who have just been thrown out of work who potentially in the middle of September may not have the prospect of going back into work anytime soon. Are you open to changing the decisions you've already made with regard to JobKeeper and JobSeeker? And can you make them Victorian targeted, for example?
Well, we are going to make some changes to the JobKeeper program, and announcements on that are imminent. In terms of maintaining it as a national program, that's our intention. But at the same time, it's a demand-driven program. And obviously the demand in Victoria is greater than the demand in other states where they've made more progress in stemming the tide of new cases. We've already provided some $14 billion into Victoria alone from the cash flow boost and the JobKeeper program. And every month going forward, there'll be more than $3 billion going into the Victorian economy from JobKeeper continuing. So there's a lot of things that we are doing. The states obviously need to share the load, and that's an important part of the way the Victorians will get through this crisis.
What changes are you thinking about, and are they a direct result of the crisis in Victoria at the moment?
They're definitely a direct result of the situation that we've seen in Victoria, as well as obviously in some other states we've seen some issues arise through the program. But what we're looking at is the turnover test and how that is applied, Tracy, to ensure as many businesses can continue to be eligible for this very important economic lifeline.
So you're saying you'd make it more widely available, but you wouldn't continue it at $1,500 a fortnight?
Our intention has always been to step it down over time. It's important to have that transition. It's important that this program is temporary, and of course we have seen around the rest of the country a very different scenario to what we're seeing in Victoria. Let me just point you to the jobs data that came out for the month of June. 210,000 new jobs were created across Australia. This was double what the market was expecting. 60% of those jobs went to women, 50% of those jobs went to young people, and it was a direct function of those states opening up because they made progress on the health front. This is a health crisis, a once-in-a-century global pandemic, and only by getting the health outcomes under control can you start to deliver better economic outcomes and that national economic recovery.
We've just been hearing on the program before you from industry and business leaders who are confused about their ability to open and worried about the impact of stage 4 lockdown. I know that you had to take those concerns to the Andrews government. Do you feel that the Andrews government has properly addressed them?
Well, they are working through those issues. I heard some good news from the steel industry, who employ thousands of people across Victoria, to say that there had been some modifications to allow them to continue to operate. I've heard from the supermarkets that there are now some changes being made that will help them continue to distribute their product, not just through Victoria, but nationally. I understand that they're working through some of the issues in the construction sector. All these are vitally important decisions because you can't just bring an economy to a halt overnight. You have to work with the business community. The private sector is responsible for 9 out of every 10 jobs across the country. And we're talking not just about the lives that we need to save with the health outcomes, but it's the economic livelihoods that we need to preserve as well. Because there is going to be the other side of this crisis, and what the Scott Morrison as Prime Minister and I as Treasurer have been absolutely focused on is to give every Australian business its best possible chance to get the other side of this pandemic.
The other side feels a long way away tonight, but thank you for your time, Treasurer.
Good to be with you, and my thoughts are with all those medical professionals on the front line, so brave and so selflessly serving our nation. Thank you.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg.